Tonight, we delve into a tale whispered by the oldest currents of the sea, a story born not of conflict, but of stillness and the quiet unfurling of beauty. This is the mythic journey of Aphrodite, the goddess born from the ocean's silent heart, whose understanding of love and splendor began not with a roar, but with a breath. Her path would lead her from the tranquil embrace of the waves to the complex dance of gods and mortals, revealing the profound, sometimes painful, depths of connection. So, before you get too comfortable, take a moment to allow your thoughts to drift, to soften the edges of the day. Turn on a fan for some noise, dim the lights, and let's cover what we have for tonight together. Sometimes our stories are better than sleep, and other times they just make you dream louder. The cosmos, in its beginning, was not a place of clamor. It was a vast, unmeasured silence, a canvas stretched taut with the promise of all things, yet holding for eons only the slow cosmic ballet of existence. Gaia, the deep-breasted earth, dreamed beneath the gaze of Uranus, the starry sky. Their communion was ancient, slow and endless, a rhythm measured in the expansion of nebulae and the silent shift of primordial rock. There was no sound, but the occasional, soft hum of creation's breath, no light, but the faint, swirling dust of nascent stars. It was in this profound, almost meditative void that the very first stirrings of possibility began to gather. Uranus, a vast, oppressive presence, held Gaia in an embrace that was both fertile and suffocating. His rule was not of thunder and decree, but of an inescapable, overarching shadow. The details of his undoing are best left to the harsher winds of other legends, for this tale seeks not the clang of steel, but the gentle echo of what comes after. Suffice it to say, a severance occurred, a wound opened in the celestial tapestry, and from that wound, something vital, something luminous, detached itself. It did not fall with a crash, but descended with the profound slowness of a pearl sinking through liquid light. This essence, imbued with the raw, potent energy of creation's deepest spring, it drifted into the vast, waiting expanse of the primordial sea. The ocean, at that time, was not the roaring, tempestuous beast of later ages. It was a boundless, deep quiet, a liquid mirror reflecting the indifferent stars, absorbing all things into its endless calm. The celestial fragment descended, not with a splash, but with a whisper, dissolving into the ancient waters. And there, in the deepest, most untouched currents, a transformation began. It was a process of infinite patience, a secret held in the heart of the world. Tiny, unseen particles of light, infused with the essence of life itself, began to gather. They were drawn together by an invisible yearning, by a silent magnetic pull. They swirled, coalesced, and gently agitated the dark, cool water. No sudden explosion, no violent eruption. Instead, the sea began to sigh. A subtle effervescence bloomed, a faint, milky luminescence stirring in the abyssal dark. It was the birth of foam, not the fleeting, brittle froth of a stormy shore, but a profound, enduring matrix, pearlescent and ethereal. This foam was alive, a living, breathing cloud of possibility. It swelled not with forceful expansion, but with a soft, persistent growth, like a bud slowly unfurling in the deepest part of winter. The water around it grew warm, then warmer still, a gentle, insistent heat radiating outward. Within this luminous cloud, a form began to take shape. It was not a sudden sculpting, but a gradual revelation, as if the foam itself was dreaming of perfection. First, a faint outline, like the shadow of a beautiful thought, then the delicate curve of a cheek, the soft line of a chin. The nascent form was cradled by the very elements that created it, the salt of the ancient sea, the breath of the cosmic wind, the quiet light from a wounded sky. And then she opened her eyes, not with a blink of surprise or the wide-eyed wonder of a newborn. Her gaze was soft, encompassing, as if she had always seen, always understood. They were the color of the deep, untouched ocean, reflecting the nascent light of creation itself. There was no cry, no gasping breath. Her first act was not to demand, but simply to exist. A profound stillness radiated from her, an unburdened peace. She was the essence of calm, born of chaos, yet utterly serene. The air around her shifted, growing fragrant with the promise of spring, and the sea, which had been her cradle, gently stirred, whispering secrets against the shores of a world not yet ready for such beauty. She was the embodiment of a nascent desire, a silent, exquisite unfolding. The first gentle touch of the world came not from a nurturing hand, but from the breath of Zephyrus, the west wind. He was not the blustering gale that tore through forests, but a soft, almost imperceptible sigh, a tender current of air that loved the delicate, the fragile. He found her, still cradled within her pearlescent foam, drifting upon the boundless expanse of the Aegean Sea. His touch was so light, so utterly devoid of force, that she barely felt it as a movement, more as a change in the air around her, a subtle shift in the world's quiet breathing. Zephyrus became her silent escort, his gentle exhalations propelling her across the calm, cerulean waters. She lay in perfect repose, a vision of ethereal grace, her form still gleaming with the faint opalescent sheen of her birth foam. The sun, a distant, benevolent presence, cast its nascent gold upon her, its warmth seeping into her skin like a lullaby. The sea beneath her hummed, a deep, ancient tune rocking her with the slow, rhythmic pulse of the tide. She absorbed it all without a thought, without a reaction, simply being. The light, the warmth, the subtle sway. Each sensation was a quiet melody in the grand symphony of her nascent consciousness. Her journey was not one of haste, but of timeless drifting, a serene passage through a world just beginning to understand her presence. Finally, with a sigh softer than any human breath, Zephyrus delivered her to the shores of Cyprus. The island was awakening, not with the cacophony of birdsong or the rustle of leaves, but with a quiet, inner stir. It was a waking of the very earth, a silent acknowledgement of the divine arrival. Where her form touched the sand, not a grain was disturbed. Instead, tiny, vibrant flowers, hitherto unseen, unfurled their petals in silent reverence. The air, which had carried the salt tang of the sea, now bloomed with an intoxicating fragrance of jasmine and wild rose, a scent that did not overpower, but enveloped, caressed. The Horae, the three graceful goddesses of the seasons, felt the tremor of beauty across the land. They did not rush with boisterous greetings, but approached with an ethereal lightness, their footsteps barely disturbing the dew on the grass. They were the daughters of time and justice, and they understood the sacred stillness of this moment. Their hands, nimble and gentle, carefully tended to her. They did not wash her with harsh water, but with the purest iridescent dew collected from the morning's first blossoms. Each drop shimmered on her skin, cleansing without touch, leaving behind a subtle floral luminosity. They did not adorn her with heavy jewels, but draped her in silken robes spun from the softest clouds, dyed with the delicate hues of dawn, the palest rose, the lightest gold, the most tender violet. These garments flowed around her like liquid light, enhancing her inherent radiance rather than covering it. They did not crown her with a tiara, but wove garlands of myrtle and rose, placing them upon her hair with such tender care that it felt like a continuation of the morning breeze. When Aphrodite finally opened her eyes again on the Capriate shore, truly beholding the world for the first time, she did not see a landscape of power struggles or impending conflicts. She saw a dewdrop clinging to a rose petal, shimmering with the reflected light of the entire sky. She saw the intricate, endless patterns of the waves as they kissed the sand, receding with a soft sigh. She observed the effortless, elegant arc of a seabird as it soared against the vast blue canvas of the heavens. In these tiny, perfect moments, she understood. Beauty, she realized, with a quiet, profound clarity, was not an external adornment or a superficial veneer. It was the intrinsic luminosity of all things, the harmonious balance in their coming together. It was the way light danced on water, the silent symphony of colors in a wildflower meadow, the unspoken grace in the movement of a gazelle. It was the profound connection that bound everything. The sun to the flower, the wave to the shore, the breeze to the leaf, her very existence, a sublime manifestation from the elements, was the embodiment of this understanding. She was the pure, distilled essence of this inherent radiance, a mirror reflecting the world's most gentle and profound truths. As her gaze drifted, unburdened by judgment, she saw more. Her delicate fingertips, still cool from the dew, brushed against the silken petals of a newly bloomed rose. She felt its tender vulnerability, the fleeting beauty of its life, and the intoxicating sweetness of its fragrance. It was a quiet exchange, a moment of profound communion with nascent life. Then, her eyes fell upon two seabirds, circling each other in the endless sky, their calls soft, intertwined. They did not touch, yet their dance was a perfect ballet of attraction, of longing, of unspoken promise. In these subtle, unassuming moments, the earliest stirrings of love began to unfurl within her. It was not the tumultuous, demanding passion that would later define much of her mythology. No, this was a purer, more elemental understanding. Love, she perceived, was a yearning, a silent draw that pulled disparate elements together. It was the quiet impulse for connection, the gentle force that encouraged two souls, or two petals, or two waves, to draw nearer, to exist in shared space, to find harmony in proximity. It was the warmth that lingered after a soft touch, the quiet comfort found in a shared glance. This nascent love was utterly devoid of pain, of jealousy, of possession. It was as boundless and serene as the ocean from which she had emerged. It was the simple, undeniable truth that beautiful things wished to be near each other, that life yearned for connection, for resonance. Aphrodite, in her purest form, was this yearning, this connection. She was the gentle, undeniable force that whispered, "Behold and be drawn." The world in her eyes was a tapestry woven with these delicate threads of affection, and she, the golden shuttle, had just begun her eternal work. The whispers of her arrival, carried on the very breezes that had cradled her, finally reached the golden halls of Olympus. Zeus, the king of gods, felt a ripple in the cosmic order, a new, undeniable luminescence in the world. He summoned her, not with a clap of thunder, but with an imperative carried on the shimmering air, a silent beckoning that reached even the tranquil shores of Cyprus. Aphrodite rose from the sun-warmed sand, her movements fluid as the tide itself, leaving behind a scattering of fresh blossoms. Olympus was a realm sculpted from pure light and resounding power. Unlike the quiet, organic grace of her Cypriot birth, this was a domain of polished marble, of gleaming gold, of voices that echoed with command and rivalry. The air here was not fragrant with blossoms, but electric with the weight of divine will and ancient histories. When she entered, she did so not with hesitation, but with her characteristic serene presence. Her calm, unblemished by the clamor around her, became a striking contrast to the opulent grandeur and restless energies of the gods assembled. She was a vision of soft light amidst their blazing power, a still pool reflecting their vibrant, often tumultuous energies. She neither sought attention nor recoiled from it. Her very being was an undeniable focal point. She simply was, and in her being, she commanded a profound, quiet awe. Sos, ever the strategist, recognized the immense, untamed power embodied in this new goddess. Her presence promised both boundless beauty and potential disruption to anchor her, to integrate her into the intricate, often volatile tapestry of Olympus. He decreed a marriage, not a union born of tender affection or shared dreams, but one of strategic balance. Her husband would be Hephaestus, the lame god of the forge, the outcast whose hands, though gnarled and soot-stained, wrought wonders from fire and metal. Aphrodite received this decree with the same unruffled calm that marked her birth. There was no protest, no plea, no emotional outburst. Perhaps, in her nascent understanding of love, she perceived that even the most disparate connections could in their own way create something of worth. She recognized the intricate dance of forces, the need for balance, even if it meant a personal tether. She felt, perhaps, a gentle, almost imperceptible sense of distance, a quiet understanding that this connection, unlike the pure, boundless love she had first sensed in the wild, was tempered by other intentions. Yet, she accepted, her acceptance itself a form of quiet grace. Hephaestus, in his subterranean forge, was a god shaped by the very flames he commanded. He was disfigured, rejected by his mother Hera, and often seen as an object of pity or scorn by the other gods. Yet, his hands, clumsy and scarred, possessed a divine artistry that none could rival. When he labored, fire danced to his will, and stubborn metal yielded to his profound patience. He did not possess the physical beauty of other gods, nor the cunning rhetoric, but he held a silent, unwavering devotion to the act of creation. He crafted for Aphrodite a wondrous array of jewels, each piece a masterpiece of intricate design and shimmering brilliance. But these were not merely cold, glittering adornments. As he worked, bent over his anvil, the glow of the molten metal reflected in his earnest eyes. Aphrodite observed him. She did not find herself drawn to the conventional notions of attractiveness. Instead, she perceived something deeper, the fervent desire within him to manifest beauty, to pour his very essence into transforming crude elements into exquisite forms. Each intricate filigree, each perfectly polished gem, was a testament not only to his skill, but to a silent, profound yearning for connection, a longing to offer something precious to the world. And now, to her, she saw the quiet passion in his focused gaze, the rhythmic, almost meditative beat of his hammer, the way the fire in his forge seemed to leap in recognition of his will. This was a love of dedication, of artistry, of quiet devotion. It was not the raw, intoxicating pull of physical desire, but a deeper, more enduring appreciation. She saw in his creations the manifestation of a soul that understood the painstaking process of bringing beauty into being. She felt, perhaps, a nascent sympathy for his isolation, a subtle awareness of his profound, unspoken desire to be seen, to be valued, to be loved. This connection was complex, rooted in mutual appreciation for creation, a love that transcended the surface, recognizing the intrinsic beauty of a craftsman's dedicated heart. Within the vibrant, sometimes turbulent, tapestry of Olympus, Aphrodite began her silent observation of other forms of love. The gods, with their immortal lives and boundless powers, experienced love as a tempestuous force, often intertwined with grand passions, searing jealousies, and the relentless pursuit of power. She witnessed Hera's furious vengefulness, born from Zeus's infidelity, the audacious leaps of desire that drove gods to pursue mortals, the bitter rivalries for affection and prestige. Love here was a double-edged sword, capable of igniting ecstatic joy and plunging hearts into the deepest despair. She saw the magnificent allure of Apollo, his golden light a beacon of artistry and prophecy, attracting adoration with his radiant presence. She observed the fierce, protective devotion of Demeter for Persephone, a love that could wither the very earth. Each divine romance, each clandestine affair, each public declaration added another facet to her understanding. She remained largely uncritical, a serene observer. Much like the deep ocean watches the surface currents, she absorbed these complex lessons, recognizing that love, in its Olympian manifestation, could be both a boundless gift and a terrible burden. It contained the potential for profound connection, but also for immense pain and devastating separation. Her initial, pure understanding of love as a gentle, unifying force began to acquire layers of complexity. The pristine clarity of her birth moment was gradually colored by the vibrant, often chaotic, hues of Olympian reality. Yet, beneath it all, she retained a core belief in the inherent benevolence of love itself. She understood that even when manipulated by ego or scarred by jealousy, the fundamental impulse towards connection, towards beauty, remained. Among the volatile passions of Olympus, a unique resonance began to form around Aphrodite, a subtle pull that went beyond the political arrangements. Ares, the god of war, was all raw, untamed energy. His domain was the clash of bronze, the roar of battle, the unvarnished brutality of primal force. Yet, it was this very intensity, this unfiltered elemental power, that seemed to seek out her quiet grace. Their connection was not heralded by grand gestures or poetic pronouncements, but by an almost imperceptible shift in the air when they were near. For Aphrodite, Ares represented a stark contrast to the refined artistry of Hephaestus. Where Hephaestus shaped, Ares shattered. Yet, in his unwavering embrace of primal energy, she perceived a different kind of beauty, the fierce, unpolished vitality of creation in its most potent, untamed form. It was not a reasoned attraction, but an elemental one, like fire drawn to air, or the irresistible pull of a storm cloud gathering over a tranquil sea. Their encounters were not described by violent passions in this gentle narrative, but by moments of hushed intensity, perhaps a shared, unspoken glance across a bustling Olympian feast, where the usual din would momentarily fade for them alone, or a silent, fleeting touch as they passed in a gilded corridor, a spark that leapt between them, unseen by others, but profoundly felt. Ares, usually consumed by the fury of conflict, would find a strange, unsettling stillness in her presence. His very being, accustomed to discord, would be momentarily calmed, almost harmonized by her profound tranquility. This attraction was natural, devoid of calculation or malice. It was the unexpected balance found between opposing forces, beauty and destruction, peace and chaos, soft light and blazing fury. It felt in those quiet moments like the spontaneous meeting of a gentle sea breeze with a flickering ember, a connection that simply was, existing in the soft stolen breaths and the unspoken language of the heart. For Aphrodite, it added another nuanced shade to her understanding of love, that it could arise even in the most unlikely of pairings, and that even the fiercest hearts could hold a silent, tender yearning for connection, for beauty, for a moment of profound, unburdened peace. And as she absorbed this, her understanding of love deepened, becoming richer, more complex, infused with the subtle dance of inherent contrasts. With the complexities of Olympus woven into the fabric of her understanding, Aphrodite's gaze began to drift beyond the gilded peaks, settling upon the verdant, ever-changing landscapes of the mortal world. Here, she observed, love blossomed with a different, often more urgent, intensity. Mortal hearts, ephemeral and fragile, embraced affection with a fierce, sometimes desperate, passion. They loved deeply, suffered profoundly, and their brief lives were often defined by the fierce warmth of connection or the chilling emptiness of its loss. She began to intervene, gently at first, a subtle tremor in the heart of a young lover, a sudden burst of beauty in an unexpected smile. She bestowed the gift of love, yet soon discovered that this gift, so pure in its essence, became tangled in the intricate web of human desires, ambitions, and fears. It was not always a blessing. It brought joy, yes, but also a raw, searing pain that the gods in their immortality rarely knew with such fleeting intensity. The tale of the golden apple, the infamous judgment of Paris, was not, for Aphrodite, a grand scheme of manipulation. It was, in her eyes, a whisper of destiny, a moment where the inherent power of beauty would be acknowledged. Eris, the goddess of discord, cast the apple, yet Aphrodite saw it as an opportunity for the world to declare its purest desire. She, alongside Hera and Athena, stood before the Trojan prince, each offering a promise. Hera offered power, Athena offered wisdom and victory. Aphrodite, in her profound simplicity, offered him the most beautiful woman in the world. For Aphrodite, this was not a bribe, but the ultimate expression of her domain, to bestow the most exquisite love, the most captivating beauty, was her inherent nature. She believed, with a gentle certainty, that love itself, in its purest form, was the greatest gift, the most profound truth. She did not foresee the subsequent chaos as a deliberate act of destruction, but as an unforeseen consequence, a storm gathering from the very intensity of such a potent offering. She understood, with a nascent ache in her divine heart, that the gift of ultimate beauty and profound love could paradoxically unleash tremendous disruption. Even as she offered her promise, a faint, melancholic understanding settled upon her, recognizing that this profound love would arrive hand in hand with an immense, unspoken cost. She would, with a profound and silent sorrow, witness the tragedy unfold, unable to betray her own essence by revoking the very love she embodied. And so, the shadows lengthened, and the winds of war began to stir. The promise made on Mount Ida bloomed into the siege of Troy, a conflict born from the fierce, undeniable love between Paris and Helen. Aphrodite found herself drawn into the fray, not as a warrior brandishing a spear, but as a silent, grieving protector. She did not don armor for the thrill of battle, but for the anguish of witnessing beauty and love being torn asunder by the brutal machinery of war. She shielded Paris, not out of favoritism alone, but from a profound need to protect the fragile flame of love that had sparked such devastation. She guided Aeneas, her son, through the chaos, her concern not for triumph or revenge, but for the preservation of a future, a lineage, a continuation of love and civilization that might rise from the ashes. She felt the searing pain of every wound inflicted in love's name, the crushing weight of every life extinguished, the desperate cries of families torn apart. The grandeur of the epic conflict often overshadowed the individual heartbreaks, but Aphrodite, in her unique capacity, felt each one. She witnessed Helen's quiet despair, caught between two worlds, Paris's bewildered passion, and the countless mortal lives extinguished in the maelstrom. In the midst of this devastation, she experienced the full, complex spectrum of love's consequences. It was not merely joy and ecstasy, but also the bitter taste of loss, the gnawing ache of separation, the crushing weight of sacrifice. The pure, unadulterated love she had known at her birth was now stained with the red of battlefields, steeped in the tears of widows, and echoed in the silence of fallen heroes. Yet, even in this profound sorrow, she did not waver in her belief in love's intrinsic worth. She understood that its power was so immense, so fundamental to existence, that its shadow was as vast as its light. Among the mortal affairs that deepened her understanding, her connection with Anchises stood as a tender, poignant counterpoint to the complexities of Olympian love and the tragedies of Troy. It was a brief, beautiful encounter, bathed in the soft glow of twilight on Mount Ida. She approached him, not with divine command, but with a veil of mortal guise, her true radiance softened to allow for a fragile, human intimacy. Their union was untouched by the political machinations of Olympus or the brutal demands of war. It was a love that bloomed in seclusion, a quiet moment of pure connection between goddess and mortal. She cherished the softness of his touch, the earnestness in his eyes, the genuine devotion he offered. From this tender interlude, a son was born, Aeneas, and in Aeneas, Aphrodite discovered a new, profound dimension of love, that of maternal devotion. Her love for Aeneas was fierce and protective, yet infused with her characteristic gentleness. When Troy burned, her divine presence became a guiding light for him. She did not send him into battle. Instead, she steered him away from the raging inferno, whispering words of escape and hope, urging him to carry his aging father and young son to safety. Her concern was not for military victory, but for the survival of a precious lineage, the preservation of a new seed of civilization that would eventually blossom into mighty Rome. She saw in his flight not a retreat, but an act of profound love and responsibility, mirroring her own desire to nurture and sustain. Through Aeneas, she learned that love could be an enduring flame, capable of surviving immense destruction, of illuminating a path through darkness, of fostering new beginnings. It was a love that transcended mortal lifespans, reaching into the future, shaping destinies. She understood that even in the face of inevitable loss, love offered the promise of continuity, the hope of rebuilding, the quiet courage to carry on. With each passing year, with every mortal heart she touched, every sorrow she witnessed, Aphrodite's understanding of love grew immeasurably deeper. It was no longer merely the fragrant bloom of a spring day or the warm caress of morning sun. It was also the bitter chill of winter's wind, the searing ache of farewells, the profound silence left by absence. She came to recognize love as a magnificent yet demanding tapestry woven with threads of both exquisite joy and unbearable pain. It was a powerful, undeniable force, a dual-faced coin where ecstasy and sorrow, connection and separation were inextricably linked. She was no longer the unblemished, purely radiant goddess who had emerged from the sea foam. Knowing only innocent beauty, the experiences of Olympus, with its volatile passions, and the mortal world, with its profound vulnerabilities, had left their indelible marks upon her. Her inner landscape, once pristine, now held the wisdom of countless heartbreaks, the echoes of countless whispered vows. Yet, this transformation did not diminish her. Rather, it enriched her. Her beauty now carried the weight of understanding. Her gentleness, the resonance of deep empathy. She bore within her the quiet sorrow of a God who comprehends the full spectrum of suffering that her own domain could unleash. And in this profound integration of light and shadow, she developed a compassionate wisdom. She ceased to judge, instead observing the ebb and flow of love with a profound, almost melancholic acceptance. She understood that to love was to be vulnerable, to embrace both the possibility of bliss and the certainty of eventual sorrow. This deeper comprehension did not lead to cynicism, but to a vast, encompassing compassion. She now embodied a love that was not just about superficial charm or fleeting passion, but about the very essence of human experience, its fragile beauty, its enduring resilience, and its inevitable dance with both joy and loss. Her presence in the world became less about imposing love and more about reflecting its profound, intricate truth. Having traversed the intricate emotional landscapes of Olympus and the vibrant, often sorrowful plains of the mortal realm, Aphrodite underwent a subtle yet profound transformation. She was no longer merely the bringer of love and beauty, but had become, in a deeper sense, its profoundest vessel, its silent receptacle. The grand, external displays of affection, the dramatic declarations, the fleeting fascinations, these began to recede in her awareness. Her focus shifted inward and outward, seeking beauty not in the obvious, but in the quiet, hidden corners of existence. She began to understand herself not just as a goddess, but as the enduring pulse within every connection, every quiet moment of grace. Her divine presence, once vividly manifest, began to soften, to diffuse. She no longer needed to appear in golden chariots or with a retinue of doves. Instead, she chose to subtly weave her essence into the very fabric of the world she had grown to understand so intimately. In the hush of a pre-dawn moment, when a single dewdrop clung to the velvet softness of a rose petal, shimmering with the promise of light, that was her gentle whisper, a reminder of delicate, transient perfection. When the evening breeze, laden with the scent of jasmine and pine, caressed a weary cheek, carrying with it forgotten melodies and distant yearnings, that was her tender sigh, a balm for the soul. And in the profound quiet of the deepest night, when two solitary human hearts, separated by vast distances, found a momentary, inexplicable resonance in a shared dream, a fleeting sense of comfort and recognition, that was her unseen connection, a thread of hope woven between souls. She no longer required grand temples or soaring hymns sung in her praise. Her presence became the praise itself, the unspoken reverence inherent in beauty. She permeated the natural world in the effortless flight of a heron across a silvered lake, in the intricate patterns of moss on an ancient stone, in the harmonious blend of colors in a sunset sky. She became the silent language of attraction between burgeoning life, the inherent pull that brought bee to flower, river to sea, dawn to dusk. Her domain was no longer confined to the visible, but expanded into the felt, the intuited, the deeply resonant. She was everywhere, yet nowhere precisely, a pervasive, gentle force. Even for the goddess of love and beauty, a profound sense of solitude began to settle upon her. She had witnessed countless loves, experienced many forms of connection, yet her own existence, rooted in eternity and transcendence, often felt apart. Her love, vast and encompassing, held a certain sublime detachment. This solitude was not a biting loneliness, but a quiet, contemplative understanding. It was the serene realization that true beauty and love in their most universal form ultimately transcend personal emotion, individual attachment. They resolve into a fundamental cosmic principle, a universal truth. She was the vessel for this truth, and in that there was a quiet, almost majestic isolation. As the ages unfurled and the narratives of gods shifted and softened into legend, people may have ceased to call upon her name with fervent prayers, or to offer sacrifices at her ancient altars. Yet they continued, unknowingly, to feel her pervasive presence. Her essence was woven into the very tapestries of human experience, a silent, enduring thread. An artist, gazing at an unfinished canvas, would feel a sudden, inexplicable surge of inspiration, a gentle hand guiding their brush. That was her lingering touch. Lovers, lost in the unspoken language of their eyes, would feel a sudden, profound quickening of their hearts, a sense of timeless connection. That was her silent pulse. A mother, crooning a lullaby over her sleeping child, would feel a wave of encompassing warmth, a protective tenderness. That was her deepest comfort. These were Aphrodite's indelible, voiceless marks upon the world. These were the subtle proofs of her enduring existence, her intricate weaving of love and beauty into the very core of the human soul. She was not a distant deity, but an intimate, underlying force, felt more than seen. Her journey had taken her from the pristine, unburdened purity of sea foam to the complex, often sorrowful, depths of divine and mortal love. The initial radiance of her birth now carried the profound, nuanced patina of worldly experience. Her inherent gentleness was now imbued with the heavy understanding of love's immense power to both create and to shatter. She had ascended beyond being merely the goddess of desire and physical attraction. She had evolved into the embodiment of connection, empathy, creation, and the ceaseless continuation of life itself. She, the very essence of love, taught the world a silent, fundamental lesson. Even though love often brought profound pain, inevitable loss, and heartbreaking farewells, it remained unequivocally the most precious treasure of existence. For it was love in all its myriad forms that taught humanity how to truly feel, how to deeply connect, how to grow, and how to endlessly strive for moments of shared grace. Her wisdom was no longer spoken in decrees, but resonated in the quiet spaces between heartbeats, a profound, enduring truth for all who would pause to listen. Aphrodite, the gentle spirit, born of the ocean's silent heart, did not truly vanish. She became the very breath of love and beauty in the world, in the subtle unfurling of every new blossom, in the tender brush of every soft touch, in the profound, unspoken language of every connection across time and space. There, she resides. She offers no grand pronouncements, no dramatic interventions, but guides with an invisible gentle force, nudging all things toward harmony, toward belonging, toward the exquisite resonance of being truly seen and truly felt. Her story is no longer a thunderous epic, but a whispered comfort, a gentle presence that emerges in the quiet hours of night. When the mind settles and the world outside begins to recede, her essence can be felt in those fleeting, tender dreams of love found, of beauty glimpsed, of longings both familiar and strange. She drifts like a soft sea mist, a luminous beam of moonlight. She gently reminds us that even when life presents its greatest challenges, when shadows seem to lengthen and fears gather, the inherent power of love and beauty remains, an eternal, unwavering presence, always just beneath the surface. So, as you listen to the soft cadences of the night, perhaps you might feel the slow, rhythmic breath of the sea, a deep, ancient sigh. Or perhaps in the quiet darkness behind your closed eyes, you might see the gentle, pearlescent glow of a single rose, slowly, serenely unfurling in the moonlit air. Aphrodite is not a god to be merely worshipped, but a presence to be felt, to be intimately sensed. Her myth is woven into the very fabric of quiet moments, of enduring warmth, of that profound connection that eases the spirit. Let her story be the gentle current that carries you now deeper into the soft, comforting waters of sleep. Feel the quiet rise and fall of your own breath, like the gentle tide against a distant shore. Let any lingering thoughts drift away, like scattered petals on a calm stream. Embrace the serene warmth that settles upon you, a feeling of deep peace, of being utterly, completely held. And as the world outside softens into the quiet of the night, allow yourself to float effortlessly into the tranquil depths of your own dreams. For in those spaces where silence meets slumber, the timeless whispers of love and beauty will continue to guide you, softly, gently, until the dawn.